of the majority population. Think of the Norman conquest of England here, whose French language did not last long on the island. And it really didn't, did it? So it makes sense when Moroni reports, after nearly 1,000 years of his people's history, that by then no other people knoweth our language. Mormon 9:34. That's a perfectly plausible interpretation at the very end of the Book of Mormon. Interestingly, however, we still may find Hebrew remnants in Mesoamerican languages when we look carefully. And this is a new interesting idea here. I like this very much. Just as English vocabulary reveals traces of Norman French, little looking has yet been done by qualified scholars, yet the slim efforts have turned up interesting results. Very interesting. Now, what makes this so interesting for me, personally, is we have a three-pronged attempt at understanding whether Hebrew was in Mesoamerica or not. This is fascinating. The prominent Mexican linguist Maurice Swadesh had student P. Agrinier search Zapotec and related languages in south-central Mexico for Hebrew words. They identified a significant number of Hebrew parallels. Now, should that happen? They did find significant Hebrew parallels, which Robert Smith later more than doubled. Swadesh said of the project, he said, "I was surprised at the number and closeness of the parallels between the languages compared. More pointedly, linguist Brian Stubbs has identified more than 1,000 Hebrew and or Arabic forms of tongues in the Uto-Aztecan family. This stretches from central Mexico to Utah." Now, the third prong is Mary Lacron Foster, a mature linguist long at the University of California, independently concluded that Uto-Aztecan proves to derive either from Proto-Indo-European or even from pre-Indo-European ancestors, while Quichua, a language of the Incas of Peru, shows extensive borrowing from a Semitic language, seemingly Arabic, of all the languages. Much more work must be done to convince the majority of linguists of the reality of Semitic language remnants appearing in Mesoamerica, and perhaps in the Native American languages also, but the evidence so far is promising and new studies are underway. See, we're not done yet, but what little has been done shows us that now if Semitic languages penetrated Mesoamerican societies, might we not expect evidence that so did the Hebrew or Arab genes? It's just a matter of continually looking. After more than a cursory effort is devoted to studying the question, we may see more concrete confirmation. We note as a methodological parallel that the implications of another example of an Asian language intrusion into America has been equally ignored by most linguistic professionals, not to mention geneticists. Otto J. von Sadowski has demonstrated from remarkably extensive evidence that a series of Amerindian languages in north-central California are directly related to the Ugrian family of tongues of western Siberia, of which Finnish is a relative. He has compiled more than 10,000 word relationships between the two areas, probably as of around 500 BC, as well as a large number of parallel custom and beliefs. So it's obvious that DNA testing of the tribes concerned ought to demonstrate genetic links, but nobody has yet bothered to carry out the study. Soon, the Mesoamerican linguistic links may be compelling enough to demand DNA testing of the implied relationship. If the language parallels are there, who How can you escape the conclusion? No, they haven't been found through DNA testing yet, but we're nowhere near done yet. And what we are finding in some cases is being ignored by the professionals because they don't think that's significant enough. You see the bias, the problem with bias. So here we have Brian Stubbs is certainly a prominent LDS scholar who asserts the Uto-Aztecan with the Hebrew parallels. And I've read those studies. They are phenomenal. I intend on showing some of the details to you in another video. But we also have a Mexican linguist and another linguist also using Uto-Aztecan as well as Zapotec and the other related languages, and they're finding a surprising number of parallels between the languages. Should that happen? If there is no Hebrew in America, how come all these parallels are showing up? Is it just chance or coincidence of a development between two supposedly completely unrelated languages? Just like it is with the Ugarian from Siberia? You see the point. People who want so desperately for the Book of Mormon to have no parallels, their backs are against the wall. The plain fact of today is there really are linguistic connections. The question is how, where, why, who, and when, and so on and so forth. We don't have all the answers, but the preliminary studies are showing up that, yes, there is something to this issue. It's not just cut and dried. Nope, no Hebrew in Mesoamerica, don't even bother looking. No, that's the anti-Mormon stance. They've already come to the conclusion before they even look at the Book of Mormon. In fact, most anti-Mormons won't even read the Book of Mormon before declaring it false, which is an odd methodology. I have to confess that never has jived with me. I don't get it. How can you refute a book if you're not going to read it first? How do you know what it's going to say? Oh, well, I don't need to know. It's obviously false. That's called bad methodology, in case you didn't know it. At least read the book, for Pete's sake. It won't bite you. Because I'll tell you what, we LDS scholars are reading the book, and we are finding that what it says is beginning to jive with a lot of the new archaeological, historical, linguistic, cultural, social, and political backgrounds of the ancient world. These can't just be brushed aside or swept under the rug anymore. Not in this information age. We have to find out what is going on. And we believe, as Latter-day Saint scholars, I personally believe, there certainly is enough material, there is certainly enough evidence, there's enough hints and clues all over the place, whether we look into the Old World, whether we look into Mesoamerica, whether we look into the Book of Mormon itself, even on the doctrinal ideas. There's enough evidence here to have faith unto belief rather easily, truly. And when you get right down to the nitty-gritty of exploring the evidence, I've got news for you. The Book of Mormon is far stronger than what has been assumed, even in the last decade. I've seen it put out on the internet just this year that through time the Book of Mormon is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and the LDS scholars are running out of parallels and evidences and all that. That's hilarious. Maybe the critics' information is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, but I can assure you the Book of Mormon isn't. I have so much information on the Book of Mormon, I can't live long enough to share it with you. I keep getting distracted by the Book of Abraham and the Hebrew Bible and all that jazz. I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'm going to die with all this knowledge in my head if I can't get it out on these videos. But I can absolutely assure you, and I will show you through videos, that the evidence is it's an avalanche. The question is, how are we going to interpret all this vast amount of stuff that we now have? We're finding more and new and better ways to test the Book of Mormon, and it's coming out even better.